Hardtack.
I knew it! I knew he was gonna do that!
Sure that
Was a
everything-
choking amount of raw food? What do you mean by that?
Like when I was working on a cruise ship, my cabin was at the very, very front.
Wait, you worked on a cruise ship? Welcome back. And today we will be reacting to Hardtack hash from the Steerage on a Victorian ocean liner from Max Miller. I don't know why there's no title there. But yeah, so without further ado, let's go. I heard this was horrible.
Could you survive in steerage on a Victorian passenger ship?
Probably
I don't
not.
think I could, but I do want to experience a little bit of what they ate. So today I am going to be making a mash of
Ooh, that
sea
sounds good. Especially since I like pastry. Not the hardtack though, the hardtack in itself.
biscuits, salt pork, and the tiniest bit of vegetables, a dish called biscuit hash. So thank you to Hungry Root for sponsoring this video.
I need to figure out how to censor things that I say sometimes, because this is gonna cost me the video at this point, because I said the F word. Hungry Root? That's the first time I've heard Hungry Root.
As we set sail in steerage. This time on Tasting History.
Is steerage called steerage because we can steer there or something?
On this channel, I have done a series all about the Titanic, and frankly, a lot of you probably found me that way. And in that series, I did a video on what the third class ate, and I talked about how it was such an improvement compared to what those in steerage, or third class, were eating in the decades previous. Like through much of the 19th century, if you were on a passenger ship in steerage, you were basically eating the same things that the crew was eating, except that you actually had to do the cooking. In 1874, while aboard the Northumberland on a voyage from Britain to Australia...
From where to where?
In 1874, while aboard the Northumberland on a voyage from Britain to Australia, Joseph Sams wrote, "The third class have their rations given to them and have to make up their own food.
Ooh, oh
Take
dear.
it to the cookhouse and afterwards
What's the cookhouse? Is that like the kitchen?
and take it to their mess room." Now, exactly what those rations were depended on how long you were at sea, but in 1855, the British Parliament passed the
Blah, 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 I can't read. On the first day of October. Why is October why is it slanted or whatever the name is? Italicatized? Steerage, because it's near the compartment responsible for steering the ship. No, but I mean I'm assuming steerage is a place, right? Because it says hardtack hash from steerage, so I'm assuming that's a place like in England or something, right?
Passengers Act, which set a minimum standard of treatment for people on passenger ships. And when it came to the cuisine, the minimums included various amounts of flour, oatmeal, rice, dried peas, potatoes.
I wonder how...
even...
No? Then I'm very confused.
Pork, tea, sugar, salt, mustard, pepper, vinegar, and of course ample amounts of navy biscuits or hardtack.
Ha! I knew it! I knew he was gonna do that!
For 84 days, did you get butter, raisins, suet?
Wait, what's suet? I swear I've heard that word before, though. I think it has something to do with cheese, right?
Suet, preserved meat, and lime juice to stave off scurvy. Then you might also have access to some fresh vegetables every once in a while, namely just after you went into port. Now, because they're just eating these rations, there are no actual menus from this period for third class, really. There are plenty of menus for first and second class, but not really any for third class until a little bit later on. So when deciding exactly what dish to make, I wanted to turn to a cookbook that was written for sailors cooking in these ships. The book was published in 1894 and is called Cookery for Seamen, and it includes a recipe which uses...
I still find it really funny, the word, because it sounds similar to another word that I shall not say.
Many of the ingredients that were part of this ration called biscuit hash. Cold meat cookery. Ingredients: 6 pounds broken biscuits, steeped. 2 pounds cold salt beef or pork, ½ pound dripping, 2 onions, 1 cooked carrot, 1 cooked turnip, 1 teaspoonful pepper, 1 teaspoonful mixed spice. Method: chop the meat, onions, and vegetables finely, squeeze the water well out of the biscuits, and rub them through a coarse wire sieve. Add all the other ingredients and...
Is the wire sieve like a bag or something?
Put it into a baking tin and brown in a moderate oven until firm.
Moderate oven? What's a moderate oven? Is that just an oven that is normal?
Cut into squares and serve. So this is not a glamorous meal, and frankly, with that ratio of a lot of ship's biscuits and very little spices, I'm going to guess this is not a particularly flavorful dish. If you want a lot of flavor, you need to go with first class ticket, I guess. Or you
Okay. Yeah, okay.
could make a wonderful dish from today's
Medium heat.
sponsor, Hungryroot. Hungryroot is like having your own personal meal planner and your own personal grocery shopper. All you do is tell them
Is that because we
what you
get
like to
hungry?
eat, and if you're trying to follow any specific diet, like low calorie, high protein, dairy-free, gluten-free, vegetarian. And then they will plan your menu choosing from over 50,000 chef-crafted recipes. The recipes and
Ooh, pesto cheese ravioli. I want that. Pancakes. Pancakes? Pancakes? That's not pancakes. That's... Well, they almost look like fucking biscuits or something like that.
ingredients are shipped directly to your door, so you don't have to do any grocery shopping, and they screen out over 200 different additives. Things like high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners and preservatives. They offer an array of snacks and meals to fit pretty much every lifestyle. Like
I just realized he has the hardtack at the back of his... He has hardtack right there. And the ship too. What is this though? Canadian outcry over packet? Is this like a stuffed toy that is shaped like an anchor?
Snacks and meals to fit pretty much every lifestyle. Like if you only want recipes that can be truly made in 15 minutes or less, then that's what they're going to send you, and they're going to be delicious.
15 minutes too much. Why can't I get some MREs? I never actually tasted an MRE. I would like to see how it tastes like sometimes. I actually have a video that I'm probably going to be reacting to later on where I think it's like Connor and Giguk eating a French MRE. Maybe that'll be interesting.
So if you want to see why I love Hungryroot, then give them a try by heading to hungryroot.com and use my code tastinghistory, and you will get 40% off of your first box plus a free item in every box for life.
Wait, I wonder what those gifts are. If it's a new PC every time, I'm in. I highly doubt it's that, but...
And a free item of your choice in every box for life when you use my code tastinghistory at hungryroot.com. Now, don't make your free item ship's biscuits. Make those
no
yourself.
Shit, yeah.
So to do that, we're going to start by cutting this recipe way down because it makes enough to, well, feed a crew. So we're going to cut it in about a fourth. It's still going to be a lot of food. Now these ship's biscuits, or Navy biscuits, we're going to cut it in about a fourth, and it's still going to be a lot of food. Now these ship's biscuits, or Navy biscuits, were an overbaked, dried hard bread that could last for months at sea or even years on land. In the American military, these
has things like stew in it. What? Stew? German Einmannpackungen EPA box ration. Einmannpackungen. Packung? Whatever. I find it weird how we can just buy them. Like, how can we just like buy them? I don't know, maybe they're extras or something.
were usually called Hardtack. And I made him here on the channel before. In fact, I did a whole video on him. So here's just a refresher.
He should remake his Hardtack video. It's gonna be more modern. I don't know. Maybe it would be worth doing it again at some point. Did he remake it? I can't remember.
Take 3 pounds or 1.4 kilograms of whole wheat flour and add a couple teaspoons of salt and about a quart of water. That's going to be just enough to allow the dough to come together. Then you want to knead it until you can't kneads it no more. Honestly, you cannot knead this enough. At least 20 minutes, maybe.
Just prepackaged foods. Companies aren't going to blame it about more demand than the minute. Oh, yeah, true.
Maybe even longer. Then divide the dough into 18 equal pieces and form each into a ball, and then roll each ball into a disc about a 1/4 inch.
I really need a rolling pin. I don't have a rolling pin.
Roll out a bunch of the dough and then use a cookie cutter to cut them out. Either way works. Set them on a baking tray and then punch some holes in the top just like you would a cracker. This will help them bake evenly and not puff up. and then
Dolly
put them
wants
into
a
the oven
cracker?
and bake at 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 150 Celsius for 3 hours, and then you are going to turn down the oven to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 95 Celsius, or really as low as your oven can go, and you're going to bake for another 3 or 4 hours or until they are pretty much hard as a rock. At that point, you can measure out 1.5 pounds or about 680 grams and then break them up. Now, these things are very hard. They were often called molar breakers because of what they did to people's teeth. And so they need to be soaked in water, but first they need to be broken up into little pieces. So you have to pound them with a hammer.
That would make a great addition to a soup.
Or a heavy...
It reminds me when we were having like veggie soup or something, and we would put what's the English word? Croutons in the soup.
Rolling pin, and to prevent them from going absolutely everywhere, you want to put them in a bag or wrap them in cloth. And even then, in the words of the recently departed Neil Sedaka, breaking up is hard to do. But once they're in fairly small pieces, you can put them in a big bowl and pour some boiling water over them, and then after a few minutes they will have soaked up much of that water and you can add some more. Then soak them for at least an hour or two, but preferably like 6 or 7 hours, even overnight.
Jesus.
Once they are nice and soft, it says to push them through a coarse sieve. I used a colander, and it did actually work. I was kind of surprised, but it was also a real pain in the butt. You end up with a sort of wet biscuit dust, which when collected all together, it kind of compounds into something that looks like peanut butter with about 1% of the flavor. For any flavor in this dish, it is not sea biscuits that we're looking at. No, we need to look to the other ingredients in the recipe. That would be 1/2 pound or 225 grams of salt pork or bacon,
Oink, oink.
1/4 cup or 55 grams of beef drippings or tallow.
Beef dripping sounds like if you're getting beef poop. It almost sounds like beef droppings.
Pork
I don't
or
know, maybe it's
bacon
just
will
me.
work. 1/4 cup or 55 grams of beef drippings or tallow, a half onion, a small carrot or a quarter of a large carrot, a quarter turnip, a 1/4 teaspoon pepper, and a 1/4 teaspoon mixed spice. Now this is usually a mix of things like cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, ginger, coriander, and a little bit of clove, and I used them all, but really you just need a pinch of each to hit that 1/4 teaspoon. Also, it calls for the onion to be chopped fine, as well as the carrot and the turnip. Now, the
I don't
carrot
think
and the
that's
turnip,
poop.
it says, should be cooked, whereas the onion is actually raw when it goes in. But when it came to the carrot and the turnip, I decided to just boil mine for a couple minutes until they were soft. The recipe also says to chop up the salt pork nice and fine, but it does not mention cooking it. Now, technically, this dish is going to go into the oven for a little while, but I don't think it's enough to really cook the salt pork, at least how I would want it.
Wait, does that mean they're eating it raw? Or at least half cooked?
And undercooked salt pork just does not entice me, so I decided to put mine in a hot skillet and cook it just for a few minutes until
Droppings are. Oh, okay, yeah, droppings are, obviously, yeah.
it started to brown. Then we can add everything together. The mashed up biscuits, the chopped cooked vegetables, and the chopped raw onion. Then the chopped cooked pork, the mixed spice.
I mean, maybe it did cook the pork because, like, the temperature was less regulated back then, so I don't know. Maybe it depended on your heating settings or something. If there was even such a thing as heating settings. I don't think there was.
And the pepper, along with the tallow. And I did this in 2 phases so I could make sure that
Was a choking amount of raw food? What do you mean by that?
was well mixed, so repeat adding all those things together and mix it again, and then put the hash into a baking dish and smooth the top. Then the recipe says...
It almost looks like the torture loaf that they fed prisoners in the US.
And then put the hash into a baking dish and smooth the top.
Or whatever the name was.
Then the recipe says you're going to bake this until it is browned on top, but since it's already brown on top, then that's not much help, so I made the executive decision to bake it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 175 Celsius for 30 minutes. And while
I mean, I guess, yeah, but like they knew how to cook, obviously, so I don't know.
while that bakes, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to Tasting History. It surely does help out the channel as we head back to the 19th century and head out onto the open sea and ask the question, was steerage really as bad
Maybe
as
that's why they always had grog or beer, because the food was sucky.
I think it was?
Or they were just lonely, I don't know. Or both.
So what exactly does steerage mean? Well, originally it actually referred to the area near the steering apparatus of the ship, the rudder. It was a particularly loud and cramped part of the ship, hence the cheapest ticket aboard. Now, by the time we start to get to early steamships, which typically still had sails as well, steerage is often moved to the very front of the ship and or to the very bottom, both of which were areas with the most rocking and with no natural light. Like when I was working on a cruise ship, my cabin was at the very, very front.
Wait, you worked on a cruise ship?
And with no natural light. Like when I was working on a cruise ship, my cabin was at the very, very front of the ship, all the way down at the bottom. But in a big modern cruise ship, it doesn't feel so bad. In these old boats, I think it was not great.
Yeah, obviously.
Now, during this period, that is the middle of the 19th century, first class was typically called saloon class, as they had nice dining saloons.
Ooh.
And second class was cabin class, and that's because they, along with first class, had cabins, private rooms to sleep and dress in. That would imply that steerage did not have access to such a perk, because sometimes they would actually just have hammocks, or if they were fortunate, then bunks built into the ship. These bunks were rapidly knocked together with coarse planks. They looked more like dog kennels than anything else, especially as the place was so gloomy and dark. No light coming down except through the fore and after hatchways, both of which were covered with little houses called booby hatches. And most of the time, your bunk
That's a really horrifying description, but okay.
Didn't come with any bedding, so if you wanted a pillow or a blanket...
Wait, so it was just a bunch of black boards?
You had to bring that along with you. But leave your big comforter at home because you don't have a lot of space to play with. Our berths were pretty well ventilated, but very confined and dark. The distance between our berths for the purpose of dressing is 2 feet broad and 6 feet long, so confined that only one can dress at once, and even in this small space, we have to build part of our luggage.
Build part of your luggage. I wonder what they meant by that.
One of my favorite descriptions of steerage accommodations actually comes from a second-class passenger, none other than Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of Treasure Island. See, when he was young, he traveled across the...
Is that a famous book? I've never heard of it. Or I have, but I just never noticed that it was called that.
Atlantic aboard the steamship Devonia. Now, he probably had the kind of money that he could have afforded first class. He came from a pretty well-to-do family, but he decided to go second class, partly to save money probably, and partly to add to the sense of adventure, and to give him better access to the steerage class, which he often visited. Describing their sleeping arrangements, he said, "Steerage is lined with 8 pens of 16 bunks apiece, 4 bunks below and 4 above on either side. At night, the place is lit with 2 lanterns, 1 to each table. More dismal circumstances it would be hard to imagine. From all around in the dark bunks, the scarcely human noises of the sick joined into a kind of farmyard chorus."
Is that why they're called pens? It's a classic you should know. I swear I've heard the name, but Treasure Island. Treasure Island. Buccaneers and Buried Gold. Coming of age story. The only island treasure thing I know is like the part in Hong Kong, not Hong Kong, in like King Kong where they go to the island in one of the movies. I don't think I know it. Or I've heard about it in passing, either way. Something like that.
Sick indeed. Some were actually sick with illnesses that they brought with them, despite usually going through medical examinations before boarding. But many people were also just seasick because boats were a-rockin'. Couple that with the fact that it stank because very often the steerage passengers all had to share 1 or 2 little privies amongst maybe 100 of them, and there were no showers or baths. Usually all there was a single basin up on the top deck that had enough water in it that you could wash your face and your nooks and crannies, and that was about it. Now, by the end of the 19th century, you do start to see some decent baths, or at least more access to basins, but on those early liners, it was rank. To descend on an empty stomach into steerage number 1 was an adventure that required some nerve. The stench was...
Sorry, I keep moving my head. It's because my neck hurts. Atrocious. Horrible kind of cheese, really?
Atrocious. Each respiration tasted in the throat like some horrible kind of cheese, and the squalid aspect of the place was aggravated by so many people worming themselves into their clothes in the twilight of the bunks. Another thing to make you sick, or at least to make you heave, were the rats.
Oh,
For
of
some nights
course.
past, several of the passengers in our cabin have been annoyed by rats, which even at times have come into our beds. And tonight we were awoke by a lady screaming, who, being awake, saw a rat walking on the partition above her head. Though the rats were hardly kept at steerage, they basically had their run of the ship. Not so for the people, though. While Stevenson in second class could go visit steerage, it didn't work the other way around. But on those early ships, the division
imagine?
between the different classes was usually little more than a rope or a partition. It wasn't like the Titanic where everyone was separated on different decks. In fact, Stevenson comments on this lack of proper division because you can hear the steerage passengers being sick, the rattle of tin dishes as they sit at meals, and varied accents in which they converse, the crying of their children terrified by this new experience, or the clean, flat smack of the parental hand in chastisement. It's interesting to read his writings because while he does make an effort to get to know the people in steerage and see what their life was like and kind of commiserate with them, he can't help but also let many of his biases in throughout his writings. Like when he wrote, "In the steerage there are males and females.
No
in
shit.
the second cabin, ladies and gentlemen."
Oh, okay.
Now I'm going to be sick. Now, obviously, just like airlines today, the experience could vary wildly depending on which line it was, the age of the ship,
Yeah.
or where it was going, what part of the world it was actually sailing in. Also, there was the question of, was this a ship with first, second, and third class, or was it an emigrant ship just really of steerage passengers?
Ah, okay, so like the entire ship was just filled with immigrants. Okay, that's refresh for some reason. Uh-oh, wait, does that mean Twitch will fuck itself up? Let me check a bit. No, for me it's fine. Alright, let's continue.
Only, because those typically were not the best experience.
I'm not breaking anything, don't you worry, unless I break anything.
Only, because those typically were not the best experience. In 1849, Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, wrote a novel called
Ooh,
Red
I know
Bird.
that one. I know that one. I never read it, but I know that one. I think the closest I got to reading Moby Dick was the animated series in the early 2000s, where I think Moby Dick was like friends with like some people on an island with that magical powers or something, and something Atlantis, or I don't know. It was a bit It was interesting to me, but looking back, I find it weird. Can't remember the name of the anime though.
In 1849, Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, wrote a novel called Redburn, His First Voyage. This was a semi-autobiographical story about his time on a ship as a young sailor. This ship, for the most part, was shuttling people between the U.S. and England and back, very often immigrants from the Irish potato famine as they fled to...
That's where my grandmother's family came from. They took a ship from like in the 1840s and came here.
And in it, he talks about how he looks down to see the steerage passengers coming up to cook at what he calls the passenger's galley. This galley was a large open stove or iron range made expressly for emigrant ships, wholly unprotected from weather, and where alone the emigrants are permitted to cook their food while at sea. He says in the morning when he was on watch, as soon as the sun came up, a man from steerage would come up onto deck to light the fire. And no sooner would the fire be fairly made than up came the old women, the men, and children, each armed with an iron pot or saucepan, and invariably a great tumult ensued as to whose turn to cook next. Sometimes the more quarrelsome would fight and upset each other's pots and pans.
Wait. Does that mean they would bonk each other with the fucking pots and pans? Is that what he means?
What he says he found really terrible was with that many passengers just using one stove, you were actually very lucky to get even one cooked meal a day, because as soon as the sun went down, he had orders to douse the fire in the stove with salt water And anyone still in line who hadn't got to use it was just out of luck and had to go below decks and eat their rations uncooked and just hope that tomorrow they could get up earlier and get at the front of the line. It seems it was a much better setup on ships that had first, second, and third class because there was a dedicated galley below decks that was much better equipped for the steerage passengers.
Ooh, okay, that's nice.
But this came with its own difficulties because you would have to watch as the wonderful foods for the first and second class were being prepared alongside your mush. The first class live like fighting cocks, and it is rather galling to see all the pastry, etc., and good things being taken under your...
Wait. Hang on a sec. They use the same, like, oven? Is that what he's saying?
Came with its own difficulties because you would have to watch as the wonderful foods for the to use. But this came with its own difficulties because you would have to watch as the wonderful foods for the first and second class were being prepared alongside your mush. The first class live like
I don't get that part, but okay.
Fighting cocks, and it is rather galling to see all the pastry, etc., and good things being taken under your very nose from the galley to the chief saloon. And while the third class experience did improve greatly when lines like Cunard and the White Star Line began building the massive ocean liners we associate with Titanic, that doesn't mean that all of the ships got that upgrade right away. As late as 1913, a year after Titanic sank, many third class passengers were...
Yeah, I know, but like, I'm assuming when he said that things were better divided, that like, you know, like the first class had their oven, the second class had theirs, and the third had theirs. So why would they watch, like, the cooks cook the first class if they weren't even in the same place that they were cooking the first class food, right? That's what I'm asking. Or at least that's how I understood it, right?
As late as 1913, a year after Titanic sank, many third class passengers were still having a similar experience to the one that their grandparents
Maybe? I don't know.
had had. As soon as the freight was stored and the forward hatch covered, the steerage passengers settled down for the night and produced their stored and having...
Yeah, that's the only way. Maybe it just had 3 ovens smacked into one place and you go there. I don't know.
A year after Titanic sank, many third-class passengers were still having a similar experience to the one that their grandparents had had. As soon as the freight was stored and the forward hatch covered, the steerage passengers settled down for the night and produced their bedding and cooking utensils. Some of them eat rice and some of them eat cornmeal mush, but all of them eat with their fingers. Somewhere a fire is provided where they may cook their food, and plenty of water may be had at a convenient faucet. But on some other ships, the upgrades had actually started decades earlier, like back to Robert Louis Stevenson, who in 1879 was sailing in the second class. He wrote, "In my own experience, the principal difference between our table and that of the true steerage passenger was the table itself, and the crockery plates from which we ate. In addition to porridge, which was common to all, we had Irish stew, sometimes a bit of fish, and sometimes rissoles."
Wait, what are rissoles? What the frick are rissoles? Rissoles? What is that? Oh, it's like fried egg roll thing, I think. Or at least that's what it looks like. Ooh. Now I want some. Oh, wait! Those things! Yeah, I think I ate some before.
Dinner of soup, roast fresh beef, boiled salt junk, and potatoes was, I believe, exactly common to the steerage and the second cabin. Only I have heard it rumored that our potatoes were of superior brand. They were probably preserved potatoes, which no matter what the brand was, were not nearly as good as an actual potato, of course. Now, I really wish that I had been able to get a hold of something like the popular Edwards patent preserved potato, which many ocean liners...
Preserved potato. So it's like powdered eggs, I guess?
...of the time carried, but alas, it seems that they went out of business a long time ago, so I'm going to just have some regular old mashed potatoes alongside my square of biscuit hash from the book Cookery for
Good luck!
And here we are, a meal of biscuit hash and potatoes which might have been prepared and eaten by the steerage class on a Victorian ocean liner. It actually kind of smells good, so I'm curious what it tastes like. Let me try to put like some onions and other stuff in there, but I also want part of the top. And here we go, bon appetit. That's not great. I mean,
if you're hungry, I guess you'll eat it, but
if I was really hungry,
yeah,
if you put a bunch of gravy on it, it would be fine. The problem is,
not enough spices.
Kind of turns to like a paste in your mouth.
But I like paste, except when it's too much, obviously.
The only texture is coming from the onions, which thank goodness they went in raw, because there's still some crunch there. The issue is that
crunch.
With that vast amount of biscuit and that very teeny amount of mixed spice and just soup, salt, of pepper, you might as well have just left it out. Honestly, it's insulting to the spices to have even put them in.
Insulting to the spices? That's the first time I hear that.
It's just super bland. You know? It was steerage.
Just put a bunch of mayo on it. They'll be fine. If you have mayo back then.
It's just what it was. Though what's crazy is that even though it was steerage, tickets actually still cost a lot. They could be like a half a year's wages for the average workman.
That is a lot, but at least it's affordable and you can use it to get a new life. So there's that. And why is my crock under the desk? Oh, okay. You mean you can just have a small amount of mayo? Okay.
And you're half a year's wages for the average workman.
It's the only condiment. Okay.
And you're having to do the cooking. Not great. Though I have to say, it is not the worst thing that I could be eating, because it turns out that there is actually a class that was even lower than steerage. Now, I learned about this while researching the video, and it turns out that on some ships in some parts of the world at this time, on short voyages, like less than a week, there was essentially a fourth class known as deck passengers. These were people who had a ticket to just be on deck. No matter if it was raining or storming, day or night, they had to stay on deck. And Rudyard Kipling actually mentions something about what they were eating when he was on a short voyage from Rangoon to Singapore. Our deck passengers, I know, fared sumptuously on offal begged from the steward and flavored with insect powder to keep the ants off.
Dang.
So who am I to complain about biscuit hash? But I'm not going to eat the rest of this. I'm so glad that I didn't make the full amount. That would have been so much food just gone to waste. And I would hate that. Anyway, don't make it. Make something else. But it's fun to read.
I think that's the first time I've heard him say, don't make this. Like the very, 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 very first time. But later on, I do have a reaction video where we will be reacting to... where's my reaction playlist? Yeah, we will be reacting to top worst 15 tasting history recipes. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I liked it.
Read about, fun to learn about, and I will see you next time on Tasting History.
Alright, okay.